On today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, we'll be bringing in Nick Fairbanks to discuss the Florida Panthers' 6-4 loss against the Dallas Stars at FLA Live Arena, as the Florida Panthers got off to a really poor start in the first period and had a comeback where they got it to one goal and got 2 power play goals on the night, but it was too little too late for the Cats. We're also going to be previewing Saturday's game between the Florida Panthers and the Calgary Flames, as Jonathan Huberdeau and MacKenzie Weegar will be making their returns to Sunrise, Florida, all on today's edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, November 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez, and you can follow me on Twitter at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on Twitter at LO_FLA Panthers. Don't forget to also subscribe to all the shows on the Locked On NHL Network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey, Flip Livingstone and Steel Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. So, Cats fans, that one really stunk. The Panthers dropped this game 6-4 against the Dallas Stars, and really this game was won and lost basically in the first period with a lot of physical and mental errors in a season where we haven't seen the Florida Panthers really give up a lot of odd man rushes. Far too often, the Panthers were giving up too many of them. And even though you would like Sergei Bobrovsky to save some of those shots, it was just for the Panthers, it was too many odd man rushes and not doing them any favors. And the Florida Panthers led a comeback attempt led by Sam Bennett, Matthew Tkachuk, Eetu Luostarinen, but too little too late for the Panthers as they dropped this one 6-4. So let me bring in my guest on the show. It is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, and not only a not so happy Nick Fairbanks, but a not so happy Nick Fairbanks who attended tonight's game between the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars. Nick, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. And to say that I'm not happy is least of, I guess, our worries right now, because that was a defensively poor game, to say the least, especially on a special night that was supposed to be something that the Panthers could be proud of in enshrining Roberto Luongo into the Hall of Fame, being the first Panther to be enshrined in the Hall of Fame. It should have been a night of, good feelings. And just overall, you think the team would just want to come out and show something, and to play a first period like they did.
Yeah, and you think about it with the Panthers. I mean, one thing that's noted is Alexander Barkov was not playing tonight with a non-COVID illness. Hopefully, he's able to suit up on Saturday versus the Calgary Flames, a game that none of us will want to miss, especially Alexander Barkov. But for the Panthers and this, it like. First shot on goal for the opposition for Dallas, and it was just a huge killer. Like in on that one, Bob didn't even move, commits low, and then goes high. Rope hands, of course, part of that top line, one of the best top lines in the NHL in Pavelski and Robertson, and just commits low but goes up high. What did you see on that one?
So it was a breakdown after a power play and everything, and it just seemed like Bob misread it, or he just went down too quick. And unfortunately, that's one of his opportunities. He decides to go down early to I guess get into position, but a lot of times I think what scouting report is go high on Bob. He can't stop it. After that, I think the floodgates open. He made a couple of nice saves. But, like you were saying earlier, the team did him no favors.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and right before that, even before the power play, I mean, the Panthers were were just generating quite a few shots. I mean, the post was their enemy in the first period really early on, and just could and even with two power plays in the first period, you would think that the Panthers would have an opportunity to score. I mean, we'll get more into the special teams really in the second segment of the show, but not there haven't been, as far as performances, individual performances. Bob was of course, very noticeable. Got pulled after the first period. Mark Stahl was very noticeable as far as a not so good performance. Gives up a turnover against Jason Robertson, who eventually gets it to Tyler Seguin to beat Bob 5-hole in that one. But another player that, if there's a player that I got to put some blame on too in this one, it's Sam Reinhart on that Niels Lundqvist goal. Just Ryan Lomberg's following Niels Lundqvist, and then by the time it gets into a certain part of the zone, another player has to pick it up. There has to be some kind of communication saying, "I got your right, I got your left," or certain terms saying, "I'm hot." But there was none of that. Sam Reinhart let Niels Lundqvist go right through it, and even though the backhand shot by Lundqvist is one that Bob should stop, Sam Reinhart just not his best moment there.
No, he just stood there. I mean, there was absolutely no communication. I mean, usually on an exchange like that, you try to get out of your guy's way, or you let him know, like, hey, you take him, I'm going to take your spot. I'm personally not going to blame Bob on that one. I don't think he was expecting that shot. I don't think he thought that Lundqvist was going to actually take that. But at the end of the day, this game kind of in a microcosm showed that this team does not have a lot of synergy right now. They don't really gel that well with all the lines. And you saw in the second period, Maurice started shuffling everything up and everything. And so that's when the team really started to kind of like really get it, like, oh, we got to get our stuff together. And that's when they started to come back. But just that first period, like nobody was talking. There was no communication and the passes were off. It's just, I mean, let's put it this way. They had probably about 8 or 9 shots on goal halfway through the first period, and Dallas only had one. And that one was a goal. So it just goes to show that, listen, like it matters. You guys have to play as a unit and you guys have to communicate. And luckily, in the second period they did, but, unfortunately it was just that first period that, did them in.
Yeah, and talking about that, of course, with Barkov being not playing on Thursday, the shuffling of the lines. Prior to the game, I kind of tried to understand the thought process with Paul Maurice putting Eric Stahl with Tkachuk and Verhaeghe. That didn't last long. Only 5-on-5. They didn't even play more than 3 minutes together. And you saw a shakeup of the defensive pairings as well. Ekblad was paired back with Forsling to start the second period, and Mark Stahl and Brandon Montour were paired back as well to start that second period as well. So just I don't want to call it a panic move for Maurice. We're only in game number 17 of the season, so it's definitely not a panic move for this Panthers team. But a little bit of a opportunity for them to kind of come back, jump in, and of course with the goalie change as well for the Panthers as well. Even had quite a few opportunities despite few bad stretches. I mean, 3 shorthanded shots on goal, including Anton Lundell's opportunity on Scott Wedgwood, which I would have loved to see Anton Lundell go backhand on that one instead of going right 5-hole where Wedgwood made a save. And unfortunately, that was the shot that Scott Wedgwood hurt his back, what looked to be his back, and got stretchered off. And then Jake Ottinger comes in.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. If Lundell had scored that goal, that arena would have erupted, and the comeback, that I think they would have completed the comeback with that. But this team this whole season has had a bunch of chances to put the puck in the net. It's just not happening. The last season, if you want to call it an aberration or whatever you want to call it, but this season it just seems like goals are becoming harder to get by. And they're just not the shots from the point aren't going in. The dirty goals that you would expect for somebody to clean up are not, happening. Tips are not happening. It seems like they don't have a lot of what a lot of people like to call puck luck. And we'll see if that turns around, the rest of the season. But, if that's going to be the case, if they're not going to be able to put pucks in the net and, you don't have somebody like Alexander Barkov driving the offense, you got to start wondering who's going to step up. Who's going to be that secondary scoring. I mean, I'm glad that Reinhart scored off of an Ekblad shot. He got the tip. Seems like he just needs to be in front of the net no matter what. And then Sam Bennett, one player I do want to give kudos to for the last, couple games after, being dropped down the third line and really putting on a performance. He scored 2 goals in a losing effort, and then all of a sudden, he's passing the puck in the offensive zone, something we haven't really seen before. Mm-hmm. He's usually somebody like a Vinny Trocheck that wants to keep the puck, put a shot on goal, and that's it, one and done. No, the last couple of games, you've seen him really facilitate plays and get the puck around the offensive zone, and it's actually worked out for him pretty well. I think he's gotten maybe 6 points in his last 3 games, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and Sam Bennett playing his 500th NHL game on Thursday night against the Dallas Stars. So 3 points in this one for the Florida Panthers as well. But let's transition over to segment number 2. We'll talk a little bit about the good as well for the Florida Panthers, even though there was more bad than good as well in this one. So we're going to discuss that next on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. But first, we're going to tell you all about BetOnline. And BetOnline.net is your number one source for all your sports betting info and stats and analysis. Get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from football to basketball, soccer, esports, hockey, and more. We've got it all at BetOnline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, you can find those at BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Second segment here on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Nick Fairbanks here for another edition of Fairbanks Friday. Coming off a loss, unfortunately, but the Panthers, good news is, we mentioned Sam Reinhart in the last segment. 5 straight games now with a power play goal for the Panthers. So that's an encouraging sign for the Panthers, and who was also very involved in working the puck around as well on that power play, Sam Bennett as well. So just incredible of what he's been since the road trip you spoke about. Really, if you want to call it a demotion to the third line, but he's definitely driving play as well, getting in on the forecheck as well. Even though the faceoff numbers aren't the best for Sam Bennett, he's definitely bringing different things to the table in different areas. So very encouraging sign for the Panthers as they're fit 5 straight games with a power play goal. But as far as the Panthers, as far as these odd man rushes, do you think this is just a fluke game for the Panthers as far as giving up odd man rushes?
With the current people who are playing defense, no, I don't think it is a fluke. I think it's a lack of mobility, and I also think it's a lack of being able to pair the right people with the right, other pairing. So in the second period, you got to see Ekblad finally with Forsling, and then you got Mark Stahl paired back with Brandon Montour. The reason why that they were paired together is because you have one guy who's dependent on for offense or being a stay-at-home guy, and then you have a mobile defenseman with them that will be able to cover and everything. When you have Ekblad and Stahl together, who's covering who?
That's a good point.
And then when you have Montour and Gudas together, or Montour and Forsling, and Stahl, you have Montour who can actually skate and everything, and he'll pinch or whatever, but you still have Stahl in the back. Not that I'm going to trust that, but at the end, you're still going to have a guy that's going to be on the back end, hopefully to stay home. But these are what the D pairs need to be going forward. I mean, I understand that Gus Forsling can be an offensive guy. That guy can do anything on the blue line as far as I'm concerned. So if he takes pressure off of Aaron Ekblad, I'm all for it, because he needs somebody like that to play with him, and maybe he'll start scoring some more goals, because his defense tonight was atrocious, and you can just tell that he's not at game speed yet. So hopefully in the next couple of games, we'll be able to see a better version or more upbeat Aaron Ekblad, and he'll be able to help the Panthers win.
Yeah, and on that goal by Jamie Benn on the third one, you wonder, should Ekblad have gone for a shoulder to chest hit or gone for the poke? And I mean, just looking at the replay of that, the answer is go for the hit with the shoulder. And that kind of got Ekblad a little lost. And of course, you see right before that, the two Stahl brothers on the board battle, losing the board battle, and just unable to reset. And that's really what caused Jamie Benn to go all alone on Sergei Bobrovsky. So as far as the poke versus hit, how bad was that in person?
I knew Ekblad wasn't going to be able to pull that off. He's not a physical type person. He's more of a finesse. He has really good hands for a defenseman and everything, but when you don't have the skating ability, and I'm not going to go off on a tangent, I promise, because this has been his opportunity since he's, come into the league, that he needs to work on skating. Aaron, when are you going to work on it, bro? Like, I understand that maybe your speed isn't going to be there, but you can at least work on, like how you skate, or, maybe get a better balance. There was a couple of 50-50 pucks tonight where you can just see that he was getting knocked around because he isn't strong on his feet. And you can't have that as a defenseman, especially if you're going to be on the board. So that's just unfortunately going to be the game that he's going to play. He's not going to hit anybody. He's going to try and always do the poke check. And the one example I have for everybody that they can reminisce about, and you basically knew the game was basically over after this, last year in the playoffs when Nikita Kucherov acted like he was going to go inside, and he cut right outside, and Ekblad totally bought it and left the goal wide open. I don't know who scored that, if it was Palat or if it was Braden Point, but Ekblad got walked. Forsling, at least, if he was defending that, I think he could have been able to recover at least, or at least make a better play on it. But that's been Ekblad's opportunity.
Yeah, and Gus Forsling had a beautiful strip on Montez Brunel shortly after Jamie Benn got that goal as well. So as far as skating, of course, Gus Forsling very, very superior as far as the skating ability for as far as defensemen on this team. So as far as pairing the right guys, I mean, that if that second period told us anything, and the jump that they had too, is that we're likely going to see this back to the regular pairs that we originally saw. And of course, Montour and Forsling played well together. And of course, their minutes there were more added minutes to them too. So as far as an 82 game stretch, I never thought that Forsling and Montour were going to be something that was going to be long term for this team. But also with the Panthers, let's just talk about a little bit of that comeback attempt for them. I mean, for the Panthers, we spoke about that 2-on-1 between Sam Bennett and Eetu Luostarinen, and once again, Sam Bennett just having a great game for the Panthers, and a power play goal as well. Matthew Tkachuk finding a way to score as well, his ninth of the season. Just at least for the Panthers, it's the power play is going, and the guys who have been scoring goals in bunches in Verhaeghe and Tkachuk, those are the ones getting going. So that's one pair of good news for the Panthers.
Verhaeghe has the best goal song on the team.
Yes.
The last two games I've been able to attend, it's just like that song that just puts you in the mood and you feel it. That should probably be the Florida Panthers goal song, to be honest with you. That should be the replacement for Sweetness, which was kind of weird. I was in a Walmart today picking something up near the arena, and they were playing Sweetness as I walked in. So I don't know what's going on with that, but to get back to the goals, yeah, exactly. To get back to the goal scoring, Verhaeghe's hot. I'm glad that he's finding the back of the net. He's got a wicked shot. I mean, the goal that he scored tonight was on the opposite top corner. Not a lot of guys can pick corners like that. And then I believe the second goal was Eetu Luostarinen from Sam Bennett, which again, very soft. And Luostarinen didn't even try to cradle it. He just put it right past the goalie, because I think if he would have cradled it, it wouldn't have been a goal. And then if I remember correctly, the third goal was Sam Reinhart from Aaron Ekblad. So
Mhm.
again, you're scoring in different ways, which is a good thing. But again, these are things that you need to be doing early in the game, or at least making sure that you're putting yourself in a position to lead instead of, consistently finding ways to get back in the games. I mean, we saw this last year. The team would not play well defensively. The goalies would be lit up, and they would have to come back in the second period, which, listen, they did. They came back multiple times. I don't remember how many times they did it last year. I think after losing, or being down in the first period, I think they're in the number one team of coming back between like 27 or 29 games.
Yeah, and I'm looking up right now. I'm kind of looking up right now based on the Florida Panthers goal differential throughout the first period. I having a hard time uploading this right now, but for it, for the Panthers, I mean, I believe it was 5 times that they've come back from 3 goals down to win. And
Yeah.
listen, we had a little bit of signs of last year throughout this game. It would have been, of course, it would have been exciting to pull it off. But again, you don't want to be in this position, and it's just frustrating after a while when you do. Even with wins, like looking back at the Capitals game, game 5 last year, at that
Yeah.
point it was just like it was there was excitement but worry. And of course, this is a new season, new personnel, new coaching staff, and it's just one so far. So I really, really hope it's not a continuous trend for this team. But so far, if they play if they play the rest of the way like they have in the first 16 games, then I think this could be a fluke.
I hope it's a fluke. I think most Panthers fans want to, but I think most Panther fans, even in our room, that we chat, that we overinflated what this team was going to do, or our expectations were overinflated. I personally, you and me, I don't think our expectations were overinflated. I think we knew that this was going to be a slow burner. The team was not going to be 15-0-1 or whatever. They started last season, or 12-0-1. Sorry, we knew that it was going to be a different team and a different style. Now, again, what's going to matter is, are they going to be able to sustain that playing style for all 82 games, and is it going to get them in the playoffs? I still think it will, because I don't think anybody besides maybe, Boston, maybe Toronto. We'll see what Toronto does. I still don't think that they're playing to their full potential, and I still think there's going to be a coaching change. And Tampa just seems to be like plodding along. I feel like they win a few, then they lose a few, and then they win. Like, they don't really care right now. And then the teams you got to kind of look out for right now is Detroit, because they're winning a few games and they're losing some games that they shouldn't win. So they're trying to figure it out. But Florida should be in there. But the team really has to commit and really not allow games like tonight to happen again, and also affect their next game.
Yeah, and refreshing hockey reference and seeing the goal differential throughout the first period. Their goal differential throughout the first period came in to tonight's game at +7. And they have a positive goal differential in the first and third period, but a -6 in the second period. So that kind of flipped in this game, where it was the second period for the Panthers that was the comeback period, really. And strange how that works for one game.
Yeah, I mean, you think about it. I mean, they scored 3 goals in the second period, and they came close. I mean, with Lundell, they came close to scoring the 4th one. You kind of wonder what would have happened if they would have tied that game up.
Mm-hmm.
I think the third period would have went a little bit differently.
Yeah, definitely. And of course, for the Panther side of things, Spencer Knight coming in, finishing the night 16 of 17 in this one. And of course the line changes, of course, had a lot to do with the different style of play that came into the third period. And of course, the Florida Panthers getting a chance with the number 1 goaltender going into after the injury to Scott Wedgwood in Jake Andre. And even the Panthers it's funny. Jake Ottinger, the broadcast spoke about how Jake Ottinger going into this game was 0-3-1 against the Panthers right before. So so a little bit of a something we know now for the next time the Florida Panthers and the Dallas Stars face, as we would expect Otter to be the starter next time these two face. But we're going to transition over to the third and final segment, where we're going to go over the scores of Thursday night in the NHL, and we're going to discuss an upcoming game, a very notable highlight game, as the Florida Panthers will finish their five-game homestand on Saturday. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast.
Your Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Third and final segment here on this Friday, November 18th edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. I'm Armando Velez. I got Nick Fairbanks here for another Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So for the NHL and Thursday night, we had a 13 game slate on this Thursday night. So Tampa Bay destroys Calgary by final score of 4-1. Calgary's only goal came on the power play. Colorado and Carolina, final score of 3-2 in overtime, a possible Stanley Cup final matchup. And Colorado only had 15 shots on goal on Thursday night. Columbus defeats Montreal 6-4. The Devils, now their winning streak goes to 11, defeating Toronto in overtime. Boston continues to win. Now they're 15-0. The Winnipeg Jets defeat Anaheim 3-2. Nashville defeats the Islanders 5-4. The struggling Penguins, they come out with a win tonight 6-4 at Minnesota. And the St. Louis Blues, second night of back-to-back after winning in Chicago last night, defeat Washington in a shootout. And there are other games going on live right now. 0-0 between Vegas and Arizona, 1-1 between the Seattle Kraken and the New York Rangers, and 1-1 between the San Jose Sharks and the Detroit Red Wings. So, Nick, this was Saturday, this upcoming Saturday. Yes. 4 p.m. start between the Florida Panthers and the Calgary Flames. And, of course, the big trade that happened this offseason between Jonathan Huberdeau, Matthew Tkachuk. Of course, Keith Yandel coming out and talking about how Jonathan Huberdeau told him that when he got the call about him being traded, and we don't swear on this show, but him saying, "Are you effing kidding me?" about getting a trade, and then being highly upset about the trade as well. And this is the first of many now, at least for the next 9 years, as of course last year of his current deal, and then 9 more years after that. So as far as fans embracing him, I do not want to hear a single boo from that crowd. I don't think they're even with sometimes disappearing in the playoffs, and even rumors about possibly off the ice for what happened between games 3 and games 4 in Tampa. Personally, if I'm there, I don't have a single reason to boo Jonathan Huberdeau when he makes his return to Sunrise.
No, he was a staple of this team for over a decade. And, whether, he was able to lead this franchise to, a Stanley Cup win, he does lead the organization in points, and he played a ton of games injured. So there's nothing that Huberdeau didn't do for this organization. He was a class act all the way through. He was incredibly gracious with his time with the fans and everything. It just, the on-ice product and the team around him just could not get it done. So I don't think there will be any boos. for him at all. I think there's going to be a standing ovation. Everybody's going to say, thank you. Kind of like what I'm not going to say it's going to be on the same level, but they did that for Mason Marchment this evening.
Mhm.
He got a huge ovation, and kind of wonder what this team would be like if he stuck around. But that's another topic. But Huberdeau deserves to have a warm welcome back here in South Florida, and this will be his second home always.
Mhm.
So I have no qualms about that. Now, MacKenzie Weegar, he'll get one too, but I think it's going to be a little bit more mixed. To be
Mhm.
honest with you, I think fans they have somewhat of a short memory, or they tend to remember things that have happened, and 4 seconds will be a lifelong thing for me.
Yeah.
And we'll just see what happens. I think him and T'Chuk are going to get into it.
That would be for some
That's
entertainment.
that's
That
what I predicted in the preseason.
I mean, and Mason Marchman got into a fight with Matthew Tkachuk towards the end of the game, and of course, the Panthers were without Matthew Tkachuk on that 6-on-5 towards the end of the game, where the Panthers just really couldn't get any offensive zone time to try to tie the game at 5 on Thursday night. But chances are they might do their tribute videos maybe at the same time. So whatever Jonathan Huberdeau's ovation is might be MacKenzie Weegar's as well. So you don't know who might get the rough jeers as far as the presentation for at FLA Live Arena on Saturday at 4 p.m. It's an NHL Network game, so anyone who's preparing to watch that game on Saturday outside the region, it will not be available on ESPN Plus. So if you do not have NHL Network in your home, maybe find a local sports bar where you can watch the game and check that out, because it won't be on that streaming platform. But I'm excited for I'm personally excited for this one. I'm just really wanting to see just how Huberdeau himself, when he comes out for warmups as well, how he receives it, going into a different locker room as well, him and Weegar for that, and kind of want to see what also the signage too from the fans. How many of "We Miss You, Hubie" or autographers stick as well,
Mm-hmm.
and I kind of wonder what that scene is going to look like in warmups as well.
It's going to be nice, and I think a lot of people who were kind of growing up with this core, over the past decade, are going to appreciate it, and they're going to want to get pictures and stuff like that. I mean, listen, Huberdeau knows that South Florida loves him, and the fans love him, and everything. But business is business. So we'll see what happens on Saturday. I'm predicting that both teams are going to come out hard. I'm just concerned right now if Alexander Barkov's going to be well enough to play. We didn't know he had an illness last game that was kind of affecting him, and apparently it was bad enough that he couldn't play this evening. So hopefully he gets over it in the next 48 hours so he can play against his best friend.
Mm-hmm.
But it'll be interesting to see them matched up.
I think he'll play. I personally think he'll play. This is just one of those rare games that you just have to get up for, and I think it's maybe something precautionary, and then Barkov will be back. It's a non-COVID illness, as well as the official Florida Panthers Twitter page posted. So nothing as far as a hockey-related injury as well. So something manageable. Maybe needs a little rest, drink lots of fluids, and release some of that sweat as well off the ice, so that he could build it up back to good enough so that he can be able to play Saturday. But I'm going to predict he will in fact play Saturday. That's my prediction. No reporting behind it, but I think he'll play. But
I think so too.
Yeah, definitely. You can't. He cannot miss that game if it's a non-hockey related in illness. But Nick, I want to thank you so much once again for joining me on this Fairbanks Friday edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. By this time next week, we'll be at our first benchmark of the NHL season, which will be American Thanksgiving, and at that time, we'll be able to really get a full picture more of where the Panthers stand and their chances of making the playoffs, because Money Puck, last time I checked, it had them at an 88.5% chance to make the postseason. So still in good position at that time. So we'll be able to get a real big picture evaluation, and that's something that to tease for next Friday's episode. But tell everybody where they can follow you online.
You can follow me, guys, on Twitter at Prudentia0. So enjoy all my takes because they're coming fast this season. And I can't wait to see, what it's going to be like coming next Thursday, because they do say that teams that are in a playoff spot by Thanksgiving actually have a much better chance, or actually will make the playoffs. So now that Florida's lost, this game, they lost a game against Edmonton. They're kind of, winning one, losing one. Are they going to be able to secure, at least a playoff spot during Thanksgiving? So I look forward to that. And, if, anything happens, I hope everybody has a safe week and a safe weekend. And, hope everybody has a great holiday.
Absolutely. Thank you so much once again, Nick, and I'll see you next Friday.
See you next Friday.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Make sure to subscribe to all the shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and the newest show on the Locked On podcast network, Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. And for your second listen of the day, make sure to listen to today's episode of Locked On Sports Today. Locked On Sports Today gives you the biggest stories of the day, plus instant reactions, big game recaps, and the take of the day. Available on the Odyssey app, YouTube, and wherever you get podcasts. So I'm Armando Velez with Nick Fairbanks, and you've been listening to the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.